In this lecture, we're going to begin adjusting the patrol speed of the enemy. They shouldn't be moving too fast around the map. The enemy's speed should be based on the speed of the agent component. However, we must also take into account the length of the spline. There's a lot to process, so let's get started. In your editor, open the patrol component. First, we should grab the agent component. Otherwise, we won't know the speed of the agent. At the top of the class, add the Unity Engine.ai namespace. Including the namespace will give access to the classes for grabbing the agent component. Next, scroll to the class. In the class, define a private variable called agent component. The type will be the nav mesh agent class. The purpose of creating a variable is to store a reference to the component. After creating the variable, let's grab the component. Scroll to the awake method. At the bottom of the method, set the agent component variable to the getComponent nav mesh agent method. So far, so good. The next step is to store the length walked by the agent. We're storing the position, but not how far along the agent has walked on the path. We'll need this information to adjust the speed. Back in our variables, create a float variable called length walked with an initial value of 0f. Initially, all enemies will start at 0. This means they haven't started walking on the path yet. We should update this variable as they walk on the path. Let's do so from the calculate next position method. We're going to refactor the current solution. Let's empty the method completely. Next, we need to calculate the percentage. Set the spline position variable to the length walked variable divided by the spline length variable. This variable should give us a percentage of how far the enemy has walked along the path. Conveniently, the value will be between 0 and 1. Let's wrap the calculation with a method called mathf.clamp01. The clamp method prevents the value from being below 0 or above 1. It constrains the value between these two numbers. At the moment, the length walked variable will always be 0. Let's update this variable by doing what we did before. At the top of the method, add the time.delta time variable to the length walked variable. Next, let's multiply the time by the agent component.speed variable. We're multiplying the time with the speed to get a more accurate value. If the speed increases, so will the distance walked. However, what if the time exceeds the length of the spline? If that happens, we should reset the length walked variable back to 0. Create a conditional statement with the following condition: length walked greater than spline length. If this condition is truthy, set the length walked variable to 0f. We're finished. I'll quickly recap the code. First, we're updating the distance walked by the enemy by adding the time. By doing so, we can divide the distance walked by the total length of the path. Conveniently, this provides a value between 0 and 1. It's basically a percentage of the distance walked on the overall path. If the enemy reaches the end of the path, we'll reset the distance walked to 0 to reset everything. Let's try testing our work by heading to Unity and playing the game. This time, the enemies are walking along the path at their respective speeds. That's awesome. We're almost finished working on the patrolling behavior. There's one more feature I'd like to add. In the next lecture, let's discuss this new feature.